Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Physiology Secrets podcast. We've got some pretty cool guests on today, the guys from the Test Lab. So we've got Craig and Pat here. Been looking forward to this episode for a little while. We're trying to get you in over the last little while. But do you want to just give a quick rundown of what you do with the Test Lab, the type of things that you get to do day to day, or the toys you get to play with day to day, basically as a part of that? And then maybe a quick rundown of both your sort of backgrounds to how you got into, I guess, triathlon, endurance sport, but how Test Lab came together.
Yeah, no worries. I think initially we started knowing some of the editors at Australian Triathlete who needed some products tested, so we were able to get our hands on a few different bits and pieces, and Pat and I started to put together a few articles in order to sort of facilitate this, and we found that we loved it, so we sort of went outside the scope of just using Australian Triathlete and developed a little bit of a social media side of things. So particularly Instagram's been fantastic, and we're looking at Facebook coming up now as well, but it's kind of just progressed from there, and I think due to Pat's amazing ability to take fantastic photos and put some really nice sort of words behind it, and I guess my ability to sort of ride a bike in a straight line has sort of helped us out from that point of view, but we've always had this obsession with trying to make things easier, better, and not necessarily just staying with a standard norm. And I think we pretty much customise everything we buy or get just to make it either fit us better or work a little bit better for us. But my background is I had a sports science background, and then did osteo for a bit, and that allowed me to sort of race as a professional triathlete and duathlete for 15, 16, 17 years or so. So I got to try out a whole bunch of different things that either worked for me or that I could try and sort of improve my performance on. And I met Pat through his wife, who is also a professional triathlete and duathlete, and sort of we got along like a house on fire because we've got that same sort of passion. It sort of just took off from there.
What about yourself?
Yeah, so we've been tinkering things with, since the early 2000s. Yeah, when Craig and Adele first started racing together. It's just gone on from there, and from that point on as well, I was working as a massage therapist and working with VIS and AIS squads overseas, a lot of pro athletes, so around a lot of pro coaches, a lot of pro athletes, seeing them customise and fiddle with things all the time, and it's just progressed from there.
Cool. Do you want to just quickly touch on what you do with NRG as well?
Yeah, so Energy Lab's just a small coaching group, so I coach really about a dozen athletes.
Yep.
And it's strange enough, from all levels, from real beginners, first timers. We've got one guy doing his first ever half Ironman next weekend, through to pro athletes like my wife. I've had Ryan Cross and now Grace Tech as well, or Tech, sorry. She'll kill me for saying that wrong.
So you got that good balance of sort of hit all areas of, I guess, triathlon in particular, of racing, coaching, the sports science side of things as well, massage and support and assistance. So you guys have a pretty good idea of what you're talking about when it comes to the type of gadgets and toys that we see in the industry. How do you go about, I guess, assessing different items or different things that pop up and finding them in the first place?
I mean, we do probably spend far too much time on the internet looking at different websites. I think Slow Twitch was probably what got me into looking at a lot of different products. The US guys tend to be obsessed with new products or different ways to do things. I think the other sort of group of people that are really interesting, particularly sort of more so now, is the UKTT guys who've just got a lot more, I guess, ways that they want to innovate, and we're seeing a lot more products coming out through them, through sort of Aero Coach and Drag to Zero, who are doing amazing things at
Revolver as well.
Yeah, Revolver, who are doing amazing things at sort of getting those contact points I guess, sort of more locked in and, getting more aero comfortable positions for guys who are...
And what's great about the UK scene as well is because they're not constrained by UCI rules, so a lot of the things that they come up with are easily transferable to triathlon because it's much more applicable. So, and they've got so much broader market to work with. They can innovate and come up with all these great products, and we can just sort of piggyback off them and promote them as and get some products to test as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you get stuff to test, what's your process at, I guess, identifying things that might be worthwhile using or recommending to others, or identifying this race suit, this set of wheels, whatever it may be, is probably not the way to go if you're wanting to look for a bit of a performance improvement or actual usability. How are you I guess, testing those out? What do you go through?
I think initially, with anything that we look at, we try and find either some research or some data that supports the manufacturer's claims. And I guess it takes a little bit of work to try and figure out, whether something is actually going to be a benefit or whether it's just marketing hype. So we try and do as much sort of work behind the scenes to pre-evaluate stuff. And then in the testing process, we do use power meters. We do sort of have some sort of objective testing tools. But the difficult thing is a lot of it comes down to just feel, and does it actually feel like we're going better? Does it, feel more comfortable? And I think, we've gone from trying to look at, specifics in terms of, is this actually faster? And without a wind tunnel or without some, more, I guess, scientific, ways of evaluating products, we've actually worked out that if you're more comfortable on a bike, or if you're more comfortable running, more comfortable swimming, that generally tends to help with you going quicker anyway. So from a subjective, we're probably a little bit more subjective than objective. And I think, what works for some people won't necessarily work for others. And we always say that, this is sort of our opinion and this works for us, and these are the reasons why. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, or a couple of good examples of the testing, like what we did recently with Nadal. She was testing a swim skin because she just did a race in Vietnam, and obviously hasn't used a swim skin before. So she did swims. So she just did 3 100s in each. So she did it in a normal swimsuit, sleeved tri-suit, normal tri-suit, and then she did it with the swim skin on as well. So it was noticeably quicker. Every time she had the swim skin on, it was quicker. What we wanted to test there was also not just the swim skin, which turned out, I think it was about 3 seconds per 100, or 2 to 3 seconds per 100 quicker each time. We also wanted to see if it made a difference if she wore a sleeve tri-suit rolled down or with the sleeves out. And in this particular case, it didn't make any difference. But there, so there's a little bit more than just
Are you also looking at sort of, I guess, how beneficial something is versus, I'm assuming a lot of your audience is probably amateur age group triathletes who are looking for these different bits and pieces that they see a pro use and they're like, oh, I hope that can work for me as well. Are you looking at that sort of cost effectiveness side of it as well, and how viable it is for your audience too?
When we did the time trial helmet test, and that was power versus speed, and it was a noticeable difference in what. How many did we do that time? About four different helmets. But we had a standard, using the standard helmet, and then each time trial helmet as we went up. And bang for buck, that is going to be your best purchase you can make. But again, it's all about getting out and finding out which one actually fits you best. Because it's fine for us to say, this, in that particular case, it was the Casque Mistral was significantly faster, like, it was at least 1.5 km, wasn't it? Faster than a standard helmet, but it was faster than the POC and the...
I think it was Specialized.
Specialized, yeah. So it was pretty easy test to do on the velodrome. Same wind conditions, same position, same person. All the gear was the same. The only thing changed was the helmet.
So that's why, I mean, we do as much sort of objective stuff as possible within reach, but it comes down to what will work on me might be different to what works for Pat, and again, what works for you. Yeah. So I think, the position, can have a bit of a bit more variety in the results as well. Yeah. But, we've done a whole bunch of wetsuit testing as well, and I think, we've based a lot of that on what people have done in the past. I know Dan Enfield from Slow Twitch has got a protocol that we've taken and adapted to see what works for us. Yep. So you're not only doing a test on one day and then following it up with another suit, but you're mixing and matching suits depending on the order that they're going in. And I think from those sort of tests we can get more realistic examples of what works best, what suits are quicker. Yep. We're heading down a path where we're trying to get a little bit more objective. We've got an Aeropod to use on our TT bike that we're starting to get into some of our testing at the moment to give us a bit better idea of how different positions, different helmets, different suits affect our drag and so forth. So we're starting to build a little bit more of a platform of what we know works and what doesn't.
Yeah, cool.
And things like when we were talking about the suits, there's so many different areas you go, whether it's faster on the bike, but also there's all the levels of comfort, what the features of them, how actually useful are they? You can have something that's really fantastic aerodynamically, but if it doesn't breathe, then you're going to cook. Or if you can't even reach the pocket, then where's the usefulness of it later on down the track when you're on the run and things like that. So it's all balancing that and just testing those products out, testing the materials, testing the designs as well.
Yeah, good one. I guess individually, what's the best thing you've tested so far? If you can put it down, or maybe a couple of things that you've gone, this is outstanding comparative to a bunch of other things in that category, whether it may be a wetsuit, a swim skin, etc. You just you don't necessarily have to name names of brands, but was there any one particular thing that stands out?
I think initially when we started doing a lot of this testing, one of the wetsuit tests that we did, I think it really stood out, not only with the type of wetsuit it was, but we realised how much fit makes a massive difference.
Yep.
And we had suits from all over. We tested about 8 top-end suits. These were $750 plus suits against each other with the same protocol over and over and over. And the test took 5 or 6 weeks. It just went on and on. But we wanted to make sure it was as robust as possible. And one suit was always better by 3 seconds per 100, which is an outstanding, it's a huge margin. And this is over, $1,200 suits. And this was a $750, $800 suit at the time. So that made us think, all right, this is, really valuable information to understand that not only the products that you use, but the fit is probably one of the most important things. And I think that resonated with a lot of the stuff that we've done, whether it's clothing. I've had some suits that we've tried out that have felt alright, but when you get a really comfortable one that's got great qualities, then you are noticeably faster. And I think the helmet thing that Pat talked about before was sort of outstanding as well. They're really tangible things that you can say, this is definitely faster for me, and it gives you a great opportunity to maximise your benefits when you're racing. What about you?
I was going to say, this isn't necessarily a product that was vastly superior to everyone else, but it was a product that really surprised us. So we had a bike to test, it was the Ventum, and it was really fun to test because we thought it's going to be not as good as it just didn't make a lot of sense that it was going to be this great bike, but and it did ride really differently to other bikes, but it just surprised us. It was so it was fast, and it was just wasn't what we were expecting. It was so much more than we expected. So that was the one that I reckon has surprised me the most. It was a really, really good bike, and actually did a lot more than we expected.
Good one.
I think we've had a couple of those as well. I know that we did Cannondale.
John riding now as a result of, I think, that review. Dad got one, and then I want a Slice now. So
the Slice was one of those bikes that we got on. We thought it doesn't really look like an aero bike. Doesn't look like a tri bike. we'll give it a go. I think it's still to this day one of the most comfortable bikes I've ever ridden, and I think, as we said in the article, it's probably the most adaptive bike to any race you can do.
Especially on, because we tested it on the lap of the lake,
Yep.
and it's still, well, I mean, I can't ride fast anymore after my accident anyway, but it's still the fastest bike I've ridden around the lake, just because it just handled so beautifully through the corners like a road bike, and then just whipped out of the corners. It had that real, that feeling through those fiberglass sections of just whipping it out of the corners, giving it a bit of extra speed. It was, that was a very, very unusual result, that bike.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing as well. I don't think Cannondale have probably pushed on as much with their tri bikes, and they probably don't market it as well in Australia, but I think they're fantastic. So
good to know I'm on the right track.
Yeah.
Got the right bike.
Yeah.
That's all right. Is there anything that's sort of, I guess, we talked a lot about things that are related to drag or performance directly. Are there any accessories to the stuff like bike computers, like anything that's not directly involved in someone going faster but is still going to help the average person, or any of those types of devices or things that you've tested that you've gone, this stands out?
I think at the moment, the more data you have isn't necessarily better. I think the right data is what we found is useful, and I mean, from our point of view, we're not super techie. We won't go to the nth degree to test something out. We won't use most of the sort of supposed benefits on our watches or bike computers or whatever. So we found something as relatively simple as the Wahoo Bolt, one of the best computers that we can use, because it gives all the information that we need without going that sort of to the excessive point. And it's just simple data. You can customize it to sort of however you need, and I've found that fantastic. As well as one of my Garmin's, the Fenix 5X, which is a fantastic watch, and mainly for my swimming, but it just makes your sessions a lot easier, and I think you're a lot more, it just gives you a better idea of where you're at. And I think if you can take the data that you need and apply it to your training to make it more effective, more efficient, then that's the best thing.
Yeah, for me, it was probably the kicker climb.
Yeah.
It doesn't make you faster, it doesn't make you better in any way, except it enhances that indoor training experience.
Yeah, the experience side of things rather than,
And it's amazing, because the big thing about training indoors is you're stuck on the saddle in the same position. You get heavy on that saddle, you start to get sore and everything. But the climb makes you move around on the saddle and change your weight distribution, and you can just ride for so much longer with it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So it's a big, clunky, ugly-looking thing, but gee, it made a difference.
Made a bit of a difference. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
And I think there's some interesting things coming out. I think Saris are starting to launch, which is a Cyclops brand, starting to launch a platform, to put your trainer on, and it's adaptable to sort of most of the trainers out there, and that will give you that feeling of being on the road. It gives you that sort of rocking effect and moving forward and back, and it's a similar thing that sort of Pat describes. You're not in that stationary position, and I think anything to create probably a safer environment, but to still give you that sort of real world feel, is probably where a lot of the training's going at the moment. And we've seen some of the people's pain caves and what they've done with their Zwift and projectors on the wall, and it's really taking off. And I think given that our cycling these days is a bit more treacherous than it used to be 20 years ago,
All these little bits help.
Yeah, it does. And if you can get your training in, you can get a really effective session in when it's raining or terrible weather outside. It's a bonus.
Yeah. All right. So I guess if you just want to take us through maybe some trends in the industry that you're seeing at the moment with different pieces of technology. We spoke about before. I know that there's a camera cut out, but we spoke about some of the different aero bar positions, having different aero bars that are covering sort of like more of the elbow, more of the forearm, and some of those moving ones that we've seen a couple of pros where they're up here and then they sort of retract them back into their base bar. So do you want to touch on a few of the things that you think companies are looking for or aiming to innovate in the next or the foreseeable future anyway?
Yeah, well, with the moulded bars especially, I think there's going to be a much bigger growth in those. More companies are going to come out with products. I saw Drag to Zero. I've got one coming out soon, which will actually attach directly into your extension mounts at the moment. So you can pop them on your P5 or whatever. And then all these other companies, the moulded ones, you have to have a bracket, I think, to be able to use them on your bikes. But they does definitely become more and more popular, and prices will come down. And I think you'll see more and more people using them. And then the Morph Tech ones, which are the change ones. I mean, they're really interesting, but probably haven't grabbed people's attention as much.
Yep.
They're certainly very aero. They've done plenty of testing to show just how much aero they are by taking out that base bar when you're not on it. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think you'll probably see a little bit more innovation in that space. I think, for the Morph Tech design is, I think, growing and growing. I think, unfortunately, the owner of Morph Tech passed away sort of fairly recently. So I'm not sure sort of what's going to happen sort of with the business itself. But Anthony Costas has got some amazing bike splits off the back of those, or with help from those, as is Alan Hofter, I think, who has won Norseman 3 times. Yeah. So they're always looking at interesting ways to make things a little bit quicker. But to touch on that sort of point about the bars, I think for the speed bar one, which we're seeing sort of on some of the Pro Tour bikes and some of the elite athletes, triathletes now, they're about $3,000 a pop, so it's really expensive for, I'm not sure sort of how much gain. It's going to come down quick, I think, as more companies sort of get into that. But there's a lot more innovation around some of the one by stuff these days. We're seeing a lot more one by bikes that are being sort of built. SRAM's obviously got a fantastic system set up for that now. But there's also cheaper options. I was looking at something sort of fairly recently, which is basically an add-on which you can pop on your rear chainstay, which actuates your rear derailleur to change gears for you. And there's a little sort of buttons on you can put them on your handlebars, or you can put them on your extensions to change gears. They're originally made for mountain bikes, but I think at about 500 Australian, it's a pretty cheap way to get a DR2 system. Yeah, right. And they're adaptable to pretty much any bike. As long as you've got a rear chainstay that can take it, you can use it. So I don't think the buttons are as efficient as your standard DR2 setups, but as I understand it, the company's looking at making some TT specific setups as well. So I think with the amount of innovation that we're seeing from smaller companies and a lot of those Kickstarter programs, there's just going to be more and more and more stuff, and the stuff that makes enough money is the stuff that we're going to see. So,
and it's, I mean, as far as bikes, obviously there's not as big a gain. Everyone wants a really cool bike, but there's not as big a gains to be made. But what's good is that so many of the bigger companies now are looking at, we're not just making a time trial bike with a few add-ons for a triathlete. They're actually looking at specific triathlon bikes. I know Specialized has been doing it, and this is their second sort of iteration of a tri-specific bike. But if the rumours are correct, Scott's coming out with one, and there's loads of other companies that are sort of going down that path of looking at triathlon specific.
Yeah,
bikes.
no longer just like your Diamondbacks and making crazy bikes for triathlon that kind of just look a bit different. It
sort of makes sense because the triathletes are the biggest market for a time trial bike anyway. So why not? But then the big gains are going to be in suit materials, the positions and the moulded armrests and things. What else?
Is it much in the? I think I've seen a few
shoes as well.
Yeah,
sorry, the running shoes.
Yeah.
Like Nike's obviously started it off, but then New Balance have got their version. Hoka's got their version. Adidas have got their version. Asics has started releasing their own version. So I mean, there's a big market there and a big room for improvement there as well.
And in sort of the custom spaces where I was about to touch on before, just things like 3D printed specific to athletes or specific to bike frames. I've seen a few like toolbox things that you can clip on the back that are
yeah.
going to fit just a P5 or just going to fit a Cannondale, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be a growing sort of space for that, highly customised to the individual product?
It does seem to be, yeah. There's a great little, what is it, Speed Metrics, I think it is, and Custom Bike Accessories. They're two companies that are doing some really cool, very specific stuff, like the little aerodynamic toolboxes to fit in the bottom triangle, and even just there's some 3D printed computer mounts just to center your computer properly, and in your handlebars, things like that. Really basic things that you think, oh yeah, should have had them long
Makes
ago.
sense,
But and certainly the toolboxes, especially for or the speed boxes to go on the back, things like Cannondale and Giant that don't have really space for storage, and they're available now on the market from third-party providers.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah. They're not cheap though.
Yeah.
They do go a couple of $100.
So you say that's where the industry's probably still got a bit to, like, it's only going to become more available, more accessible. Some of this stuff that we're seeing pop out now, give it a couple of years, like almost like anything, it's eventually going to come down to be.
What do you think? I think it could go two ways, because the main companies are really looking at doing triathlon specific bikes. More and more of that inbuilt storage is going to be there already. So maybe for the lower spec bikes, those sort of accessories will be popular, but your higher spec bikes that are really specific probably won't need it.
Yeah.
But you were probably looking at, in the not too distant future, a lot of that 3D printing for chain rings or for cranks and different bike parts as well. I don't think they're at a point yet where they're necessarily strong enough. I know that there's work in progress to test a lot of 3D printed stuff to make it specific for certain athletes. So I think as the 3D technology sort of evolves, we'll see more and more of that, but we're probably a few more years away at this stage.
Actually, there was an article, I can't remember where I read it, about a company just in Melbourne that was, well, I don't know whether they were experimenting or how far down the track they were on 3D printing bike frames.
Okay.
So
right.
That was pretty interesting. So I can't remember the actual material that they're using, but it might have even been through Slow Twitch, maybe that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah, nice one. Probably the last thing before we wrap things up, is there anything that you want to see come out in the next little while? Is there some product or bit of gear that you picture in your head going, either I'd really like to use that, or I reckon that'd make a bit of a difference, but no one's done it yet?
I don't know how feasible it is sort of in the next little bit, but I think having sort of more of the data available to you either on the run or on the bike without actually having to look at your screen, so having like heads-up displays, which we're starting to see a little bit of. Yeah. I think that'd be fantastic to be able to sort of adapt into a sunglass that's not huge, that doesn't sort of weigh you down either on the bike or on the run. That'd be interesting to see that evolve more, and I think the technology is sort of heading that way. Yeah. And I think getting some consensus as well on some of the different products, wheels, bikes, whatever, that are actually going to be more efficient for the real world. Pat and I sort of touched on an interesting podcast from one of the aerodynamic experts in the UK, Hambini, who questioned whether a lot of the aerodynamic testing or wind tunnel testing was actually relatable to what actually happens on the road. So it'd be nice to see a little bit more, universally available information on real world testing as well for products.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that will help the whole industry develop, and it'll make it easier for consumers to say, all right, I know I can get this brand of wheel and it's going to be all relatively similar. I don't need to spend $6,000 on a pair of Zip NSWs to get the best bike split possible. Yeah.
I like the idea as well, and I'm sure it won't be too far down the track of getting your your aerodynamic number, the CDA.
Yep.
There on your computer at all times. I reckon it'll be too far down the future, because then you've got a really good idea of how much time you are wasting on the bike when you're actually on the course in a race. You look down and go, oh, geez, I'm way out. Get back into your position. You know.
So with my design though, with my heads-up display, it'll be there for you.
But yeah, exactly. You'll have it on your heads-up display. So it's
you
not there
to
yet
keep looking
anyway.
down, then you get the helmet coming out the back and crane drag.
Yeah.
So I think that technology, can
It's
really.
not far away.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be. I think that technology can really help us sort of going forward. And I think some of the initial sort of developments with the Aeropod or the Nocio Connect or
Swiss side.
or the Swiss side, they will.
They're probably already getting all that information.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
cool.
see.
Exciting times for what might be to come. Last thing to leave everyone with, where can we find you on social or online to be able to have a look at your stuff?
Just on Insta at the moment at the Test Lab.
Yep.
Also on Facebook, the Test Lab. And then we've got reviews coming out, mainly obviously sort of generic or female related reviews on Witsup.
Yeah.
Witsup.com.
Witsup.com.
Yeah.
I'll get all those links and chuck them in the notes for everyone anyway. But thanks for coming on, guys. Really been good to have you in finally to have a bit of a chat about what's coming up. I'm sure we'll have you back in at some point, and we'll have to get you guys on the treadie or the bike soon enough to do a test yourself.
Definitely this guy.
Yeah.
I think we've been avoiding it. We're trying to get a little bit fitter until we jump on, but we can't wait to sort of get back and. As sort of we touched on before, getting some more objective data on sort of how fit we are at the moment. I think we tend to kid ourselves sort of through the winter, but it'd
Find
be great
other toys
to
that make you faster, but
it'd be great to come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it'd be fantastic to come and
I want to
put us through our paces.
Test him against your dad.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
Great. See how he goes. Probably smash him on the bike at the moment. Oh well. Anyway, thanks for coming on, guys,
Yeah, thanks,
and
mate.
thanks for watching another episode of the podcast. We'll see you in the next one.